meeting to order and start off with the flag salute, pledge allegiance, led by Sean Nicholas.
Everyone please stand. Join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, would you take the roll?
Please let the record show that all planning commissioners are present except for Commissioner McCann.
We have anyone that wishes to address the Planning Commission needs to fill out a request to speak, and any person wishing to address the commission on any subject other than that's what's scheduled, now is the time to do so. Hearing nothing, we'll move on to consent calendar. There's nothing on the consent calendar, so we'll go to public hearing. Item 2.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I think you may have inadvertently overlooked the approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you. We have any comments on the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I won't be voting because I was not here last month.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as issued.
I'll second it.
All in favor? All right. Moving on to the public hearing. The first item, number 2, is coastal development permit for site improvements associated with ADA compliance, safety railing, and new changing cabanas in the existing outdoor shower area in the Monarch Bay Beach Club at 500 Monarch Bay Drive in the recreational area zoning designation. We have a staff report.
Yes, thank you, Chair Donor, Planning Commissioners, Sean Nicholas, Project Planner. This is for the improvements proposed for the Monarch Bay Beach Club at 500 Monarch Bay Drive. There is the vicinity map to show in context where the site is located. For background, the project site has operated as such since 1965. As a component of this project, there's no change of use or expansion of the footprint of the facilities that are presently out there. The applicant is undertaking some general repair and maintenance to the site, and as a component of that, a few areas require a coastal development permit, and those have to do with ADA improvements for equal facilitation, some safety railings in 2 particular locations, and some changing cabanas within the outdoor shower area. So here is our site plan. As you can see at the top of the site plan, adjacent and associated with the parking area is the area which you will see for the extended ADA access and compliance associated with the drop-off for the shuttle service that goes on there. You can see here the existing viewing patio, and as well as along the top of the wall here will be where the new safety railing is located, and within the footprint of the existing outdoor showers where the new cabanas will be located. You can see some renderings here that the outdoor ADA accessibility improvements will match the existing walkway into the down into the lower exterior patio of the site and connect over to the existing ADA ramp. You can see that the railings, as shown in your staff report, is meant to be very visually open and as transparent as possible, and very consistent with the view fencing that was approved by Coastal Commission for the headlands areas as well, with trying to preserve as much as possible views towards the ocean. And then you can see the cloth cabanas. There's a family one and 2 single changing cabanas within the outdoor shower area. All of the materials and colors of both the cabanas and for the ADA new covered area will match the proposed improvements that are going to be ongoing at the beach club. There is, again, no expansion of the existing footprint, and as noted, it is primarily these improvements are associated with ADA and safety improvements. Staff has reviewed and determined that all the findings can be met for the CDP, including consistency with the local OCP, visually compatible with the existing facilities, and will provide appropriate coastal access now to all visitors, especially with the ADA improvements. And staff does recommend that the coastal development permit be approved, subject to the findings and conditions of approval included in your draft resolution this evening. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff and the applicant are available to address any commissioner questions this evening.
Yeah, a couple questions for here. On the cabanas, where are those actually going? So it doesn't show on, at least I can't find it on the site plan, where those go. Like, shows on the elevation, but there's no footprint unless I'm not looking at this properly.
So on sheet, and I have it up here on the computer screen as well. It's on sheet A1.01 in your packet of the plans, and on the screen here you can see this is the outdoor area. So this would be the sandy beach out here. So the Pacific Ocean is up at the top of the screen. This is that outdoor shower area that's existing. Right now they have some storage and locker space in that area. And then on the far end of that existing shower area is where the cabanas will be located, right in this area right here.
So, okay, so the inside,
Yes, sir.
so you don't see them other than
No,
the top.
there's an existing screen wall, so it's all contained within that area. That whole outdoor shower area is already contained and screened by a wall.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, makes sense. Okay. And the other question was on the all the work relative to the ADA handicap area. How much landscaping is coming out of any? Are they using what's the existing curb face there and working within the site?
There's a little bit of landscaping along this turn, if I remember correctly, that will be impacted, but very minimal in terms of loss of all the major trees and things of that nature will be maintained. It's more ground cover and minor landscaping that will be lost.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So if one is to drive up into the area up above, then there's a drop off with is that where the canopy is?
Yeah, that extension of the canopy and through here. Right now, there is a tram system that comes and drops off guests who can go down through here, through the top part, through the stairs down, which is through this portion here. And this just provides for covered access to the ADA ramp as well. And that was just noted as being required to make the site, again, more compliant with state regulations for accessibility.
So according to the ADA, there is the drop off, and then the ramp connects right away from the drop off, and it goes. I can see the zigzag, and it goes down. Does it actually end up in the sand? Does it go that far?
What it goes down to here, which is into the main patio area, which is where the kind of entry into the beach club. And then there is another ramp portion that goes down just to the grass area, and there's a number of walkways. You can see that what I just highlighted is this pathway right here, and this is a concrete pathway, and there's a number of improvements. And then there's another ramp that goes around over on this side that provides access. A concrete ADA or a concrete ramp that goes down to the beach on this side. So that would be how someone in a wheelchair would be able to access all the way to the sand. And the ramps are all existing. This is just, again, for this covered area at the top. All of those other ramps of which I spoke of and shown are existing today.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sean, the covered area where someone gets dropped off, if someone is not handicapped, they are covered all the way down to the club. If they're handicapped, then they're covered until they get on the ramp, and then that's not covered. So is ADA require the covered area, or is it just the ramp access and they've just extended this as a matter of convenience?
So they have received advice from a CAS professional, which is someone that provides information in terms of compliance with the California accessibility requirements on this site, and they've indicated that the need had to do with just the covering of this area and not of covering the ramp itself. And so based on those recommendations, that's where this requirement and this scope of work has come from.
Seeing no further questions from the commission, I'd like to open up the public hearing. And we have 3 speakers. First, Wayne Rayfield.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Wayne Rayfield, and my wife and I have owned property in this almost 7 square miles of paradise that we call Dana Point since 20 years before the incorporation of the city. We have lived permanently in Monarch Bay since 1994. And I, first of all, would like to thank you for your service and also say we completely support this item on your agenda and hope you will approve the Coastal Development Program or permit that's been presented by Sean here. It's vital, we think, to make everything there fully compliant with the ADA statute, and we appreciate the needed enhancements for greater safety. So I hope you will approve it, and thank you for listening to me tonight.
Thank you. The next speaker, Doug McLeish.
I'm Doug McLeish. I've been a resident of Monarch Bay for, I think, 30 years, past president. I'm just to support the addition to the club and support what Wayne just got done saying. So we're, all the residents are 100% happy with the added change. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker, Mark Karazan? Kazarian, thank you.
Being a resident at Monarch Bay for the last 20 years, this is my front yard, and I'm just very in favor of the upgrades and improvements to the project and the property itself. So there you have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, I will close the public hearing. And now the commissioner discussion.
Yeah, I've looked at the plans. I've actually visited the site. It's obviously looks like there's been some work going on down there. I know we approved some light pole replacements last month. It's really nice to see homeowners take care of their property and homeowner associations. And I don't know why anybody would get in the way of bringing the site up to standards that allow all people access. So I would be full support of this, and I'll hold back the motion until after everybody speaks, but would be willing to make the motion to approve.
Thank you very much, and ditto.
Fully supportive of this and truly appreciate the addition of having a CASP out there to actually walk it and have that input. That's really important in today to make sure you're compliant.
Sounds like we're unanimous as far as supporting the project, and so I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve, let me get back here and read this. Coastal Development Permit CDP 18-0014 for the site improvements associated with ADA compliance, safety railing, and new changing cabanas in the existing outdoor shower area at Monarch Bay Beach Club at 500 Monarch Bay Drive in recreational zoning designation.
I'll second that motion.
We have a second. Call for the vote. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cleared the room. That was easy. See you.
Okay, the next item. The next agenda item, number 3, the local zoning plan amendment, LCPA A 19001 and zone text amendment, ZTA 19001, amending chapter 9.31 floodplain overlay district and chapter 9.75 definition and illustration of terms to meet minimum national flood insurance program requirements. You have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Donor, members of the Planning Commission. I'm the project manager for the FEMA map upgrades. This is a process that was initiated by FEMA, referred to as the California Coastal Analysis and Mapping Project, or Open Pacific Coast Study, that initiated in January 2012. The flood insurance rate maps associated with the CCAMP were finalized in September of 2018 from the federal government. This final phase involves FEMA review of our local floodplain ordinance, and as a part of that review, the National Flood Insurance Program Compliance Specialist reviewed our ordinance and stated that there were some minor amendments that we needed to make to bring it into compliance with the Federal Code of Regulations. I've listed them in the staff report, and I've noted them here in chapter 9.31. I'm not going to go through each one. If you have a particular question, I'm happy to answer any of the questions that you have about those particular sections in either the Coastal Overlay District chapter 9.31 or in the definitions and illustrations of terms. Again, the changes were relatively minor. I did want to make a quick point to let Planning Commission know that this is separate from the sea level rise process that is going on with the city right now. That was through a grant through the Coastal Commission. The sea level rise studies on a separate track, and spring of this year is when we anticipate maybe getting that before this body to take a look at what they've come up with that. But this is completely separate from that. In fact, the FEMA maps do not account for sea level rise. It's based on existing conditions, and it's based on storm events and their particular protocol. They looked at storms over the past 50 years. They looked at shore profiles to establish the new maps, and so this does not account for sea level rise. It just assesses the existing risk for flood insurance purposes. With that, I just would like to note that staff is in full support of these revisions. They are enumerated in Exhibit A that's attached to the draft resolution, and the Planning Commission is in a position where they are making a recommendation this evening to the City Council for future consideration of both the local coastal plan amendment and the zone text amendment. And staff is recommending that you do make a recommendation of approval to the City Council. With that, I'll entertain any questions that the Planning Commission has, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Kurt. Do we have any questions?
I have one. So Kurth, on this, it looks like it's just minor language changes. Are there any projects in planning that this could potentially have any effect upon?
Based on the revisions, no, not at this time. None of either in the 9.31 or in the definition section.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No, thank you. I understand. Thank you.
I've just got a couple quick questions here, just because I'm curious on a few things here. If you go on page 3 of the staff report, it's section 9.31.050B4. talks about the addition of language requiring submission of new technical or scientific data to FEMA for your loamer. Do you know what the difference between an engineering, typically in a loamer you're showing water movement. What's the difference from an engineering study and scientific data? I've never heard that term used in this reference.
It's come straight from the California Model Ordinance.
Okay.
So the language they want us to include, the sections in the California Code of Regulations also cite these very same requirements. So we're just including
Copying it. Okay.
Yeah, so that it addresses ours. So, but the difference between scientific or technical data is, I'll just speak from experience. South Cove. It was mapped as a special flood hazard area,
Right.
but it was undefined. So the city had to go through the flood study to establish not only the base flood elevation, but the project impacts of that to ensure that there was no change in the base flood elevation for adjacent properties.
Okay.
So
As part of the
that,
Clover.
yeah, so that study was subsequently adopted by the city council, and then at the time we didn't have a requirement to report it to the FEMA, but we would report that to FEMA so they could establish what the base flood elevation is, and then set insurance rates based on that.
Okay.
study.
So when you say that you would report that, is that under that added section about up within 6 months?
Yes. Whichever occurs within 6 months of the
Or-
information being discovered, or project approval, whichever occurs first.
Right. That was one of my other questions. Is in theory the project? I guess maybe that answers the question. Is a typical process where you do the Clomer, you get your site permits, you bring up the elevation, and then you get the loamer done so you can actually go and start building. You wouldn't wait 6 months to turn that in. So is this sort of a catch-all in case it's like a flood structure or something that isn't have anything other than there's no building permit needed?
I guess it depends on the nature of the LOMAR or the CLOMAR. I know we're in the process of looking at a CLOMAR with FEMA for Doheny Village that we've been in discussions with FEMA for, although we haven't kind of formally gone through that process. But the idea is that as soon as you understood what the parameters were, you would forward that. They want to facilitate it. A lot of projects, and this is also from experience. So when the levee was decertified,
Right.
As part of Katrina, they changed the maps. But what had happened, what we found out was when the county processed all those developments on the east side of San Juan Creek, they never reported any of that to FEMA. So some of our residents lost out on some grandfathering clauses that they otherwise would have had the rights to. So FEMA wants us to facilitate the information as we understand it on a more local level,
Okay.
because they're typically dealing, this was the whole California coast.
Right.
So they're dealing with a much larger geographic area. And when we get site-specific or local flood data, they want that as quickly as they can so they can work it into the maps and assess the risk and get the right insurance rates for our residents.
Perfect. And then the last was the changing or the new reference datum point. Does that change our base?
No, our grading manual already
already
refers to
offset, okay.
NAVD 88. It's just that definition came in when we adopted our zoning ordinance back in 93 or whatever, so it's a little outdated.
Perfect. All right. That was all I had. Thank you.
88 seems like a little outdated also. The insurance requirements, so when FEMA says here's something's in a flood plain or flood zone, they require that owner get insurance. Is that correct?
If it's in a special flood hazard area and you have federally backed mortgages, then yes, you are required to have flood insurance.
But if you don't have
If someone came in and paid cash, then they necessarily wouldn't have to
Okay.
purchase flood insurance. Although if you're in a special flood hazard areas, it would behoove you probably to purchase it.
and I see it in the one section, it's standards for recreational vehicles, and it goes into detail about they have to be road ready in a certain time. Do we have any obligation to monitor that?
In as much as it's in our ordinance, I get we will have an obligation. Although where this may, with regard to the current flood regulations, it would impact maybe the state beach, but those recreational vehicles aren't there for over 180 days. Our communities along the coast, including Beach Road, that just don't they're not large enough to accommodate those type of vehicles. So, from an enforcement standpoint, I don't think there's a lot we're going to have to do.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing no one from the public. Oh, wait a minute. We have anyone here that would like to address the commission? All right. Then I will close the public hearing and go to commissioner discussion. Sounds like we've discussed.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve, I've read through this, clearly we are meeting our state and federal obligations by making these changes, and again, I don't know why we get in the way of that, so I'd make a motion that we approve these as written, and that would be approve Local Coastal Plan Amendment LCPA 19-0001 and Zone Text Amendment ZTA 19-0001, amending Chapter 9.31 Floodplain Overlay District in Chapter 9.75, definition and illustrations of terms to meet minimum national flood insurance programs NFIP requirements.
I'll second it.
Voting. The ayes have it. Now you have it, Kurt.
Thank you.
Okay. I've no old business. See no new business. We have a staff report.
Good evening, commissioners. I just real briefly wanted to mention that I had an opportunity to meet with Chairman Donor last week and just do a little brief orientation on the chair duties. And one of the suggestions that came up was that in an upcoming meeting, I schedule a workshop item and talk a little bit more about the process that goes into the reports and the projects that you're seeing. You guys are essentially at the tail end of what often could be a multi-year process, and getting an understanding of more of what goes on in preparing those, and the analysis is something that was suggested that would be of interest. I thought it was a good idea, but I wanted to open it up. If there are other items you wanted to include, and not necessarily have to give them to me tonight, but to shoot me an email, and I'll be sure to include it in the workshop as well. And that's all I had this evening.
On behalf of the Planning Commission and the staff, I would like to present our former chairman, Chairman Murphy, I guess emeritus. I'd like to present you with a plaque.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Appreciate your service and for your leadership and your term of service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It will be well used. Thank you.
We have commissioner comments? Besides thanking Danny for her service? Yeah, Commissioner.
Yeah, I missed out last meeting, so congratulations to you for becoming the chair, and it's been nice serving next to you as.
I'm not going yet.
Well, I understand that. But, I was just going to remind you that gavel comes loose, and I broke mine already from using it at the house. So, but congratulations, and thank you for your service as chair. It's not an easy job.
Oh, well. Thank you for all your help.
All right, meeting's adjourned.